Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! So nerds!
Hello,
nerds!
Now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the Yang Gang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Welcome, Aaron from Hustle. Oh, sorry, Humanity Films, formerly known as Hustle and Film. And we have a special moderator on with us, Brandon, the nerdlin for Yang, who is operating the chat. So whenever you see Nerds for Yang typing anything, that is not me. So if there's misspellings or if things don't make sense, you can thank the guy that's in the orange t-shirt. Okay, so I wanted to start, Aaron, by catching up with you because the last time we talked was the Secure the Yang panel interview with Andrew MF Yang. That was pretty cool, huh?
It was awesome. It was an incredible experience, man. I'm glad you set that up. That's great work. We freeze? Uh-oh.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. And I was so glad that everything went okay and everybody's sound was okay. And, you know, nobody got disconnected because, as you know, like it all happened kind of freestyle.
It was stressful. I was literally arriving in Dallas. I was probably 45 minutes before you guys let us in, or we started the live stream.
Right.
I was trying to get inside of the doors of the venue so I could set up, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not done with the prior event yet." So
yeah. No, I was worried about you in particular because you were on the road going to Dallas. You needed to find a place to stream from. I mean, right off the bat, the project manager in me is like, oh, there's like 5 things that are going to go wrong. He's not going to find a place. They're not going to let him in. They're going to let him in. The Wi-Fi is going to suck. The power is going to go out. Like, you know, his OS is going to update like the minute before we go live.
The force was with us that night.
Yeah. It all panned out. And at that time, you were Aaron from Hustle and Film.
Yes.
And now you are Aaron from Humanity Films. So
yes.
Is there a story about that?
No, I mean, honestly, I kind of figured, you know, I needed to make a change at some point because it was just tough. And I figured it went more along the lines of the campaign. And, you know, I am a filmmaker and it just felt right, you know?
Yeah. I guess when you started your channel, it wasn't about the campaign, right? I guess it was more about filmmaking.
Yeah, it was just straight filmmaking. The first video I made on Andrew Yang was literally me telling my subscribers, hey, I'm about to start following this campaign. So if the content is a little bit weird for a little bit, then that's what's going on. So yeah, something happened. And apparently this is what I'm doing now.
The restaurant is under new management.
Yeah, for sure.
People are like, what's this on the menu?
Yeah.
But did your audience grow as a result, or how did it go? Did it change? Or
yeah, I already had this is like kind of my throwaway channel. I already had like a sizable audience from prior content. And when I switched, like I started doing content on another channel and I was doing that over there. So I was like, well, I need a channel where I can just do whatever I want to do. So that was what this channel was, just doing whatever I want to do. So I never really, there was no qualms about me doing, you know, stuff on Andrew Yang because it's like, well, this is just my own personal stuff. My other channel is more business related in filmmaking. So yeah, it works, man. It works, honestly. This is truly the stuff that I'm most passionate about. And as far as my film projects, this is the kind of stuff I want to do anyway. So it just made perfect sense.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you're part of the grassroots kind of content creation community that we have here. And I remember when I first saw your channel, I was like, oh my God, the video quality and the sound and the lighting, it's amazing. And then I learned that you were in the biz. And I thought, wow, that's so cool that we have someone that's able to do a little better job than the rest of us that are kind of learning as we're going.
You guys are doing a great job. It's more about the content, but it's weird. Like my story as far as filmmaking was like, I was a very pragmatic guy, and film just made more sense as far as communicating messages to people. Like it takes the look and the framing and the colors and all of those things to make a story really resonate with people. So it is really all kind of coming full circle for me. I guess you'd have to know the whole story, but no, this is right where I'm supposed to be. So I'm glad to be here.
And since it is Sunday and the playoffs are in process, are you following the NFL at all? Or are you?
I am not. As an entrepreneur, I've given up all forms of entertainment for the most part. So if I can't make money doing it and enjoying myself, it's just not going to happen. So
you have no time for the NFL.
No, I don't follow for NFL, NCAA, anything. I might catch a playoff game every once in a while or just a championship game, but it's been a while since I really paid attention. But I am a Browns fan, and yeah, I don't know if they had...
no, I don't think they're in the playoffs.
Exactly.
I will tell you this, Aaron.
Yes, sir.
If you like organizations that are underappreciated, where it's full of people who are just full of a lot of grit, that are led by leadership philosophy that's about people and team and community, you are a Seahawks fan. You may not know it, but you are. Fan. You are. So that's just, especially since you don't have a strong preference. I'm going to mark you down as a Hawks fan.
All right, that'll work.
Now, so tell me, what was it like in? And I know, audience, we're going to get to we're definitely going to talk for Medicare for All. Then we're definitely going to talk about the debates, and probably going to talk about Ohio. I know those are like the three hot things that are really percolating. But before we get into that, I wanted to catch up with you, Aaron, on what was it like in Dallas? Like so many of us are following this movement from thousands of miles or hundreds of miles away from where the action is. Yeah. And you were lucky enough to be on the ground at a real event. Like, what was that like?
It was incredible. Honestly, it was my first experience being out there. And, I'd seen everybody posting their videos live, and I'm just like, I want to do one. And they're all so far away from me. A lot of you guys are in like California or, New Hampshire, Iowa. So it was incredible seeing the real people and talking to people. And it was amazing, man. And just seeing the crowd and kind of the diversity, hearing Andrew Yang speak live, and he had like a little bit of a different speech that particular night. So it was great, man.
And so then have you gone to any other events since then, or was that the one?
No, just local stuff. I've done some OKC Yang Gang stuff and just like some volunteer work, but we haven't had any more or I haven't been to any other like Yang official events since then. And I was actually looking to go to Yang Week, but just schedule and with me being self-employed, it's kind of tough to really walk away from work. So trying to find a moment here in the next couple of weeks to get back out before February.
Yeah, I totally feel you. Someone was saying to me like, hey, you're always sitting in your bedroom. Like, why don't you get out there? I was like, dude, I got a job as well. And I kind of live far away. Right. But I'm trying, but
it matters.
I do respect and admire the folks that are able to get there on the ground and in person and be part of the movement sort of in real life. That's incredible. And so sounds like the Dallas event for you is pretty cool. Yes. And how's your channel doing lately? Like, what are you focusing on? What's going on with your content? I'm
kind of wanting to go a little bit more broad. Like, I've been really kind of breaking down things as far as, going further into data. We get a lot of speeches and, Andrew's a pretty easy guy to follow because you can kind of, like, I asked him about, what he's reading as far as to draw the motivation policy. So he's really easy to follow. You can go through the Atlantic and you go through the New York Times and you can see the data and the pieces and you go through the polls. So I really try to be data driven as far as, my analysis, like having not really been somebody who's super engaged in politics over the last few years. So I just kind of let the data speak and I just dig into it. And I've been kind of looking at, what are the other candidates saying? What's their message? And, is this something that Yang is weak on? Is there a counter to that? So I've just been trying to maybe hopefully draw some support, or at least put some doubt in some minds of some people who are sure they're hardcore Warren supporters or Sanders supporters. But I mean, I feel like that's the best contribution I can make, other than being on the ground at this particular point.
What are some kind of aha moments that you've had that you found have resonated well on the channel, where you're like, oh, this is a nuance that people aren't getting, or this is a difference between the candidates that may be being missed by others? Like, what are some things you're catching?
Definitely Warren on her wealth tax, just having the data, suggesting that she's going to be about $1 trillion short as of what she's expecting to bring in, and what that's going to mean for her actual policy positions. That's going to be huge. Also, I kind of noted early on the disconnect with the Medicare for All versus what Sanders' bill versus what the language was saying. I'd actually run across a couple of pieces earlier on in the year about the phrase Medicare for All, and just really noting that it seems like there's a disconnect as to what that phrase actually means. So Yang's position in particular is more in line with the public perception of Medicare for All, rather than the pundits or I guess the hardcore progressives who are looking for a specific matchup of Bernie's bill. So I just kind of took that position, and that's just been my stake in the ground since the beginning.
Yeah. So, I mean, since you brought that up, let's hit the first hot topic of the show, which is the Yang healthcare plan. And I've seen a lot of different opinions on it, but a lot of consternation about, hey, he's flip-flopping, he's not really for single payer. And I was curious what your read on that is.
I mean, listen, I look at it as Yang definitely capitalized on the support of the phrase. I mean, I'm sure he didn't want to be the one guy to say, do you support Medicare for All? No, he didn't want to be that person. He didn't want to have that on record. But he also looked at the data. And when you look at the actual polling data on the phrase Medicare for All, you'll see that, many Americans don't really support Bernie's bill in actual practice, but they do support the phrase Medicare for All. There is a strong correlation with people who support Medicare for All, the phrase. But when you look at the numbers start going down to 50s, 40s, 30% of people who actually want what Bernie's version of the Medicare for All legislation is. So with that, I just kind of said, you know what? He's doing the best he can. You know what I mean? He can't say no, he doesn't support Medicare for All. And maybe he could have called it something else, but he also doesn't want to confuse people. And I think people who really look at this stuff realize that most Americans don't. And it's hard to get people to say, okay, I need you to go look in this brand new idea. But it's a lot easier for people to rally around the phrase they're comfortable with. And that's just kind of what Yang did. Could he have called it something else? Sure. But would that have been in the best interest of the campaign? I don't know. You know what I mean? I think it would have come down to, we know that Bernie is the candidate people go to when it comes to Medicare. He's the most trusted on healthcare. So you're not going to beat Bernie Sanders on healthcare, but you can beat him on being pragmatic. And I think that his pragmatism is actually going to be the thing that helps him to actually get those Trump supporters, those right wings, those progressives. That's why he resonates with everybody.
Yeah, it almost feels like Yang is really well suited to clean up in the general election, but it's going to be it's going to be a bit of a slog between now and July. One thing that I noticed when I was looking at the more detailed healthcare plan on the website was it wasn't crystal clear to me how accessible Medicare would be for people who currently don't have access to it. And I was surprised by that, because I was like, whoa, like they've been working on this plan for a while. They know that there's a lot of Bernie supporters who are pissed about sort of the nuanced differences. So in my opinion, I would have expected them to be super clear, and I didn't feel like it was super clear.
I was disappointed in that for sure. I was looking for some clear differences. I was like, you know what? You dragged this thing on long enough. You waited until right now to release it. There's going to be some big bombshells in there that's going to be like, oh, this is just way better, or this is clear, or here's the funding mechanism or something. I was looking for it, and I was just like, this is just a longer version of what we kind of expected before.
Now, what I will say is, let me share my screen so people who haven't had a chance to see the plan, we can look at it together. So what I do like about this is he does have a much more kind of multi-layered approach to addressing healthcare. Like, he's not just talking about how it's going to be paid for and who's going to be able to access it, but he's talking about prescription drugs, using technology to make delivery more efficient, changing the incentive structure, focusing on preventive care, talking about end-of-life care options, thinking through like comprehensive well-being, mental health, and then kind of blocking or reducing the influence of lobbyists. So from that perspective, I kind of feel like, whoa, that was pretty good. That is a much more sophisticated and comprehensive approach, but it left out the who's going to get what part. And I, hopefully there maybe will be like service pack 1
right
of this plan, which is like, oh, and here's who's going to be able to access it, at what age, and how much you're going to have to pay for copay. And I'm sure like the campaign has a million things on their mind right now, but I would say, given how Democrats feel passionately about reforming healthcare, and that Yang has taken some heat for the terminology. I mean, I think it's not just us in the YouTube sort of community. Like, even he was on like this week with George Stephanopoulos, or one of those Sunday shows, and they were going after him, saying, "Hey, here's a video of your commercial using the term."
Yeah, when I heard that, I cringed. The first time I said, "No, why did you say that?" Like, just leave the phrase out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're really making it hard for me out here.
I know. And then we finally had I don't know if you were following the whole Tim Black thing when he was pretty critical of Yang.
Yeah.
And Tim had kind of like simmered down a little bit.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But I respect him. Like, this has not helped the cause in terms of our charm offensive on Tim Black. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
So I think my takeaway for the healthcare stuff is, I actually think his proposal would go over best in the general election with independents and moderates.
Yep.
But I also think we need to win this nomination. And even if you're not going to give free healthcare to everyone, then just be clear what your proposal is. Because right now I feel like it's the worst of both worlds. Like, it's still a bit of an empty vessel that people who are predisposed to not like him are going to say whatever they want, like, oh, he flip-flop, blah, blah, blah. And then those of us who do support him, we don't have all the ammunition, we need to kind of canvass and make the case.
Yep.
All right. So that's the Medicare stuff. What about the debate? So we've got the debate coming up on the 15th of the month. January 10th is the last day to qualify. There's that YouGov poll that came out that had Iowa and New Hampshire where we didn't hit over 5%. A lot of people are pissed about this. What's your take? Or do you think it's much to do about nothing? Or,
I mean, it's tough because they're blaming each other right now. You look at the New York Times and the actual DNC got into it just the other day, and it's like, you make standards, but you don't expect polls to come out. Like, what kind of? That's just a ridiculous system. But at the same time, I feel like we know what we're dealing with. After 2016, I feel like there should be no surprises as far as what, I won't say the DNC is willing to do, but that they have their candidates of choice. They have things that they would prefer to happen, and they're not going to do anything to disrupt that. So I've actually been curious about this since Bloomberg decided he wasn't going to take donations if they were going to change the thresholds on qualifying for debates. So are we going to have a guy who has 8% who's not on the debate stage? Like, is that really what's going to happen? So it's just a weird. Honestly, I feel like the DNC is kind of throwing this election away. The further we get down into it, it's just like, you guys you're making it hard. People already have a trust issue with the mainstream media and the DNC after 2016. So I don't know, man. It's a tough one. It's another tough one.
I really worry that if they continue to if there continues at least to be the perception that they're putting their thumb on the scale, that come July, when they want us all to hold hands and rally behind whoever they want to be our nominee, I don't know. It's going to be hard. And you would have thought we learned our lesson in 2016, because I do think turnout for the Democratic Party was not nearly as strong as it could have been, especially for young people and African-American voters. And I think part of that was a lot of those folks were probably Bernie supporters who saw their candidate get the shaft. And my view is, I don't mind. I mean, of course, I'd be disappointed, but I can live with Yang not getting the nomination if it's fair and square.
Yeah.
But if it's this kind of stuff where you're like, oh, we're going to require a minimum number of polls, but we're not going to have any polls between the last debate and this debate, it's like, well, then if the guy nails it in December and there are no polls between December and the January debate, then what was the point of the last debate?
Exactly.
You know, it's like, well, and then the spokesperson for the DNC was saying, well, there have been plenty of polls before the December debate. It's like, yeah, well, that's the whole point. These debates are meant to kind of bring your A game, to show what you've got. They're 3 hours long, and they're not going to be as biased by name recognition. And so now people are saying, well, look, there have been the YouGov polls and Yang didn't make it. Okay, but there were 2 of them, one in Iowa and one in New Hampshire. The DNC rules are you need 4 anyway. So you at least, at a minimum, need 4 polls in these early states taken between the last debate and the first debate and the next debate. And I would argue, since statistics are kind of, volatile, you probably want 6. And it used to be like there were polls coming out all day long. And to your point, I agree. It's kind of crazy that now the DNC is pointing the finger at the newspaper, saying you're not doing enough polls. It's like, well, you guys made the rules. It's like, if you run a college admissions program and you say you need the SAT to get in, you're going to make sure the SAT is going to be offered next year.
Right.
And if it's not offered, you can't say, well, you could use your PSAT score. It's like, well, what the hell is that about? So
that's a great example.
only you gotta love the nerd. That's truly a nerd channel. We're gonna use all kinds of of nerdy analogies. So okay, so I feel like the writing may be on the wall that unless we pull, like some Hail Marys and some new polls come out in the next week, and we don't make that debate stage, it's not the end, but it really is a missed opportunity, given like the momentum I felt like we got from the last debate, and more people will be watching this one than the last one, since this is the one right before Iowa. What do you think? Do you think it's a mortal wound, or just sort of a little bruise, and we'll work it through? What do you think?
It just depends on where Andrew's willing to go. I mean, that's kind of the thing a lot of us have been wondering. Is he going to take off the gloves? Is he going to go into, diplomacy, or is he willing to take off the gloves a bit? And if he is, I think that he could go the not full Trump route, but if it's, MSM is suppressing me, if he's willing to go that way, I can see it working out in his favor. Not in his favor, but I feel like he can spin it a little bit. But if he's going to toe the line, then it's going to be tough. If you're not going to win being the best politician. He's not the best politician. He might have the best ideas, but he's going to have to do something a little bit more unconventional if he wants to get back out there. Momentum is everything. Like you said, he really had a lot going into this. So, he just got 16.5 million and the endorsements and everything. And it's just like, all right.
And I have to believe that some of that would not have happened had he been excluded from the December debate. Like, I don't think he would have raised 16.5, and he may not have gotten some of the endorsements. He may not have gotten a little bit more media coverage. Being off that stage, I mean, you look what happened to Castro. Like, if you're not there, you just sort of out of sight, out of mind, right? And then we become this weird fringe campaign.
Exactly. Must be present to win. That's it, man. You got to be up there, showing up.
If we don't get the nomination and we get one of the party favorites, sort of the party superdelegate favorites, and that candidate loses, I mean, a part of me will be like, well, you know, a pox on both your houses. You guys are just, such, you know, you're so freaking corrupt. But hopefully, you know, maybe we'll be optimistic. We still have 6 days, or 5 days, 5 days to get 3 more polls. It ain't over till it's over. Maybe there's a whole bunch of polls coming in soon.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting is not only that there haven't been that many polls, but the one poll that had come out in early states, you know, we were at like 2 or 3% or something.
Yeah.
And that makes you wonder, like, oh, shoot, like we spent, I think, millions of dollars on ads in Iowa and New Hampshire. And you got to wonder, do we need to kind of pivot a little bit in terms of our strategy on how we deploy that 16.5 million.
Yeah.
The other thing is we don't know how much of that 16.5 is left too.
Right.
Because some of it may have been pushed in early to kind of get these polls. So fingers crossed, I guess we'll see what happens, but I certainly am very disappointed in the DNC making rules that seem kind of arbitrary. And you got the one candidate who raised, you know, went from like 5 million to 10 million to 17 million, like an up round every quarter, when other candidates, most of them were up and down. And if he's not going to be included, even though he's not a household name and he's kind of matching them now, you know, in terms of in the same order of magnitude for fundraising, like how is it that we're not going to include him? And then you've got, of course, the diversity issue, which is, I think it's going to be an all white debate, right? If he's not there. Yeah, this is the Democratic National Committee at its finest.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah. Were you a Bernie supporter last time around?
I was not. I mean, no. I mean, my thing with Bernie is I just feel like he just says things. I mean, I know he believes what he says, but I don't think he really cares about them actually being like realistic. And I don't know. I feel like government is too much of his solution to things. Like I understand, you know, I believe his heart's in the right place, but just not. I can't say I'm a Bernie supporter.
So So who were you supporting in 16?
Oh man, I forget. I mean, I don't know. Every once in a while, I was a Rand Paul fan, and then
okay, a little libertarian in you. That's cool.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, like I said, Bernie had some ideas, but I was more I guess maybe I was kind of a Trump supporter in that burn it down kind of thing. Like, you know, if we can't fix it, then, you know, let's send him in there and see what he does. I obviously wasn't expecting much. Definitely didn't like some of his rhetoric. But at the time, it was just like this two-party system isn't getting it done. So perhaps if Trump gets in there and reminds us that, you know, there's other options, maybe we can start working for the people again.
Yeah, I was not a Trump supporter, but I will say after during the general, I thought to myself, you know, maybe this whole persona is kind of like a campaign sort of face.
Yeah.
And that once he gets to the White House, the magnitude of the Oval Office, the history of that institution, the weight of American history on his shoulders will give him no choice but to, you know, focus on getting results for everyone. And he's a businessman, and he'll use his, you know, his sort of pragmatism. But obviously that did not happen. I feel like he went more crazy.
He did. I mean,
like he went more crazy. It's like, dude, you got the job. Yeah. Like you can now be normal.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting what we got for sure. You know, we thought it was, you know, kind of a caricature, but no, he's a full cartoon. So it's definitely a lot right now.
You know what someone was saying to me a couple weeks ago? Brandon, can you stop kicking the garbage can over there? So what someone was saying to me a couple weeks ago, he's like, well, Tom, you know, it could be that he's really focused on getting reelected. And once his second term starts, you'll find, and I'm like, no. Fool me once, shame on you, you know? Okay. So that's about the debate. Now we need to talk about the Ohio kerfuffle. Have you been following the Ohio primary like ballot thing? What's
Yeah,
your take on that?
I mean, honestly, it's just a big mistake from somebody who's not politically experienced. I mean, we saw the campaign grow significantly even in the last 6 months. So Yang is obviously in a position that he wasn't in, and he probably didn't ever think he'd be in, as far as just the level of support.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to blame anybody. If you don't know, you don't know. But I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it was just a mistake, and I think it's going to be a big mistake, especially if we do miss that debate. And asking people to do things is always a little bit tougher than we wish it were. But hopefully he gets that grassroots support, and people are willing to do it because they're truly behind what he's standing for. And it sucks, but it's just
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I also feel like Ohio, that seems far away for me. Like for me, it's all about this next debate, and then after that, it'll be about Iowa and New Hampshire and Nevada, and we might be at a point where Ohio is kind of a luxury problem. Like we don't even have to worry about if we're getting like our butts kicked in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. And the other thing is, like, I totally could see there being a ton of paperwork and forms and in triplicate and old school, like literal paperwork. They probably don't even do this shit online. Sorry, Brandon. They probably don't even do this stuff online anymore. And it's still like, bring this form to this office at this time. And to your point, it probably was due at a time when the campaign didn't have 17 million, and it was, Andrew and Zach driving around in like a Ford Taurus or whatever they cruise around in. And so I'm not shocked when people are like, how could this happen? It's like, well, there's a lot of states, and I'm actually in the middle of applying to schools for my kids. And there's a lot of forms and transcripts and all this stuff. And, that happens. And you get a call from the school saying, we don't have Brandon's transcript from this grade or whatever. So I'm not shocked that happened. But I also don't think in the greater scheme of things, Ohio is going to make it or break it for us. I actually feel like the next few debates, the next basically Iowa and New Hampshire, like that's what it's all about. Like if you do well there, even though we're not on Ohio, like we can make it through. But if you look at the alternate scenario where we get our ass kicked we get our butts kicked in Iowa and New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina, Ohio won't even matter.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, so that's the Ohio controversy. So did we hit all of the controversies? We talked about Ohio, the debates, and Medicare for all, right?
I think we did.
All right, let's see if the audience has any topics that we haven't hit that people wanted to talk about. And while they are typing that into the chat, I'm going to do a quick thank you to our Nerds for Yang members. So, Aaron, you'll just have to indulge me for a minute while I shill for the channel.
A word for your sponsors.
That's right. Well, let's a word from our sponsors. Let's go to the memberships list from our most recent members. We'll start with the executive vice president, who is Kristen Slevin, and then we're going to go to the vice presidents, who are Fat V4444, Jim Sapp, Emily V. Locke. Then we'll go to our hardcore. There's a lot. I'm going to go fast. Tibby, Ming, Mike, Chad, XP, Felix, L, Go Bogart, James, Gene, Adrian, David, Tracy, and finally, our verified nerds. Sydney, TY, Chris, John, Lisa, Brian, Sugar. Yes, La Don, Mr. Lai, Brandon, Albert, Erez, Peter, Sophie, Yerman, Hitachi. So thank you to all of our members for supporting the channel. And actually, Aaron, have you turned on monetization for your channel yet? Or are you thinking about it?
I'm monetized, but I don't even know how to use half these features. So, like, it's all too much. I've never been so popular.
you got big channel problems now.
I had 30 subscribers forever. I don't know how this stuff works, man.
This is a good problem to have. I mean, I was actually hesitant to turn on monetization for the channel because I was like, oh, I don't want people to think like I'm trying to like enrich myself from this channel. But then I started spending a lot of money on the Spanish audio dubbing because I have like voice actors do that stuff. And then I started spending money on different software like StreamYard, but then upgraded from iMovie to Adobe Premiere, and then had to license like some sound. And then I had to pay for hosting for the podcast. It started to add up.
Yeah.
And then at some point, like Mrs. Nerds for Yang was looking through like the credit cards. She said, what is this $500 charge to Unilingo? And I was like, oh, that's for my Spanish audio. So she's like, well, why don't you see if you can raise some money from the channel? You do it all the time for the campaign. So I turned on the ads and the memberships, and that helps defray some of the costs.
For sure.
All right. So now let's go. I saw some questions about is this guy running for Congress? Are you, Aaron? Dude, you got your Sunday best on.
No, sir.
Not in the future. So is that 100% no, or is it that you have no plans at this time?
I am not eligible to run for any office. They'll be like, no.
All right. So you're just dressed up spiffy. You know, if you were running for Congress, you'd have to have the flag pin on the lapel. That's
for sure.
How you know.
For sure.
How you know. Do you think we'll see any endorsements this month, and will it matter?
I mean, I don't know. There's just not a lot of people. I mean, we know who Yang doesn't have, right? He doesn't have the over 60 crowd. So who resonates with them? Those are the only endorsements I'd really even be interested in. Like, even when the Donald Glover thing came out, I mean, that's cool, but I don't think that moves the needle in a big way. I mean, we know he's got a lot of young support. So I'm looking for Betty White or some congressman or, Obama or something like that. Other than somebody of that stature, there's nobody who I think is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think any one endorsement will move the needle. I do think a series of higher profile endorsements will actually maybe convince the journalists to take him more seriously, which then results in more earned media coverage, which then helps us with the polls and so on. But I agree with you. I mean, other than maybe Oprah and Obama, like, endorsements are great, but the other one would be if anybody who drops out, like if Booker. But I think the incentives for any politician to endorse Yang are very low because probability is he's not going to get it, and then like Biden's going to be like, you're that bastard that endorsed one of my adversaries, right?
Yeah, man, everyone's looking out for the favor when this is over, so that's
I wish they could do like all of the people running for office. This would be the ultimate poll for all the 24 candidates. We do a secret poll. Who do you think should be president? And it's anonymous, so they don't have to feel like they don't have to like apologize or get the kind of snarky looks from Biden or Bernie or whatever. And I would not be surprised if Yang were in the top 3.
Yeah. If
you did a poll of a secret poll of the candidates, because they get to know each other from what I hear, and I think they kind of like them.
Yeah.
All right. So here's another question. From what I am hearing from those on the ground in Iowa, ratio to establishment is a good thing. So when they say ratio establishment, maybe they mean anti-establishment?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's what it probably means. I suppose it could. Iowa is known for picking people a little bit out of left field. especially on the Republican side. They picked some doozies. So maybe, but if you believe the last YouGov poll in Iowa, it looked like a four-way tie between Biden, Bernie, Buttigieg, and Warren, and they were each getting like 20 something %, which doesn't leave a lot for the rest of the candidates.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? Iowa, we don't have a lot of data.
Money.
Oh, Brandon, what are you saying?
Rock Lee, he's at the bottom. Yeah.
All right.
He has a
Rock Lee, you're calling out a super chat alert. Oh, thank you. Brandon's like, he's like, hey, we got some money. Who drops out first from Rock Lee? And by the way, thank you, Rock, for the super chat. Who drops out first, Pete or Warren? He thinks Pete. Ooh. What do you think, Aaron?
I say Warren, only because I think Warren is trying to solidify her spot as the VP if she can't get the actual nomination. I think Pete he knows he's not going to win, and he's probably thinking about the future. Pete's a young guy. I've given him credit as far as he's a great politician. His policy and in practice is not the greatest, but he's going to be around for a long time. He's the future of maybe the Republican Party, who knows, but he's good at what he does. So I think Warren will eventually decide, you know what, I want that VP slot, so I'll drop. But
so you think Warren will drop out before Pete?
We know. I feel like a woman is going to get the VP slot, right? And and because of that, I mean, even Biden said he would go a woman. He said he'd go an African American woman. But I think that Warren she's a safe bet. You know what I mean? And I don't know who you would get. Maybe Harris, but I don't think Harris would be somebody people would really want for VP. But Warren, I think, would bring in a lot of support. She would help out somebody tremendously.
Yeah, I agree with you that Warren would probably drop out before Pete, and I would say for different reasons. I would say one is because I think Warren's star is starting to sort of get a little darker in terms of her polling support. Her fundraising performance looked kind of weak this last quarter, and she seems to have peaked. And so she might be a pragmatist and is like, well, look, I don't have a good shot at this. Whereas he's hauling in the money. I mean, he came out of nowhere. Dude's the mayor of the 4th largest city in Indiana. And he's tied with the former vice president.
Unbelievable.
And the head of the whole Bernie movement, right? So, and lastly, I think Pete's pretty ambitious. And I think having him stay in his mind will probably be in his interests, like politically long term. Whereas to your point, if Warren drops out, she can be a surrogate. She is definitely in the VP and certainly cabinet running. And that's what I would say about Pete. Now, I would say, since we're talking about Pete, I have to bring up something. I know if there are people who have Pete as their second choice, just bear with me. But I don't have any evidence. This is just purely on a feel. But here's my litmus test. If you worked at a company, and let's say Pete Buttigieg was a CEO, and you were like one of his direct reports, and you're in one of those conversations where the boss says to you, like, hey, I will take care of you. I'm going to look out for you. Like, you just have to trust me. I don't think I would trust Pete.
somebody dropped some moolah.
What's that? Oh, we got breaking news from Brandon. Yeah. What's up?
Jennifer Montgomery.
Oh, Jennifer Montgomery.
Okay.
Okay. Oops. So let me just wrap up my thing about. So thank you, Jennifer, for the super chat. One thing I will say about P is I just feel like he's so smooth. He's so polished. His resume is so perfect. It makes me a little bit suspicious, but maybe I'm just being too hard on the guy. I would certainly take him over Trump. So we'll say that.
For sure. For sure.
All right. What are your thoughts, Aaron, on ranked choice voting?
I think it's the next step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. So do you think it would change? Like, how would it change things?
I think it'll kind of force people to not have to. I mean, I don't know if it'll change the outcomes. You know what I mean? I just feel like, if you're going to win, you're going to win. But I think it'll definitely. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I don't know if it's drastically better than what we have currently.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it will help maybe in these congressional districts where it's like lopsided and super gerrymandered and stuff like that. And it might also help, obviously, candidates who appeal to a large number of people, but isn't everybody's first choice. I mean, in this case, maybe Yang would do well if we had ranked choice voting in the primaries. But I don't think it would be as big of a deal for the democracy as democracy dollars would be.
For sure.
Right? I mean, like, look at freaking Bloomberg and Steyer dropping like $100 million. It's like, what? This is nuts.
You can actually buy an election, turns out.
Yeah. All right. So we got another question from Josh Ring. Thanks for the super chat. What should be the Yang Gang agenda if Yang doesn't win?
I don't believe there's such a thing. I believe you do whatever is in your heart, because I can't tell somebody to go blue no matter who or any of that stuff. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm like, if you're not standing for something, then what's the point? So, I mean, keep it humanity first, but make whatever decision you think makes the most sense to you, honestly.
You're bordering on, there's a lot of Yang Gang supporters who are like Yang or nothing people. You sound like you may be in that camp. That's not a small camp.
I mean, honestly, that is kind of where I am. I mean, like I said, I wasn't happy. I mean, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm not going to vote against him just to vote against him. Like, it's kind of, just the Black America, I guess, in me is like, we've seen how this stuff plays out, and, being treated as like a kind of a guaranteed vote doesn't help anybody. You want to make sure that people are like, okay, well, how do I get Aaron next time? Instead of, well, we didn't give him who we wanted, but he voted for us anyway. So I think you got to really, stand by your convictions, especially when it comes to voting, unless the system is truly rigged and none of this matters. But if we actually have votes and this is real democracy, then yeah, we should vote for who you want to actually vote for.
Now, Josh is saying in his second super chat, maybe flood the 2024 field with pro-UBI candidates.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came to my mind, which was Yang 2024. Of course, it would be tough if the Democratic nominee won and then was obviously running for re-election. That would be difficult to primary a sitting president. I do think that if Yang ended up in the cabinet of the president and was able to advocate and be, I think he could be a great team player. And then in terms of us, like, I think one of the things that we need to think about is, yes, this is a lot about Andrew Yang as a leader, but it's also about his platform and his approach and his worldview and his values and, the problems and solutions that he's identified. And those aren't going to change if we don't get the nomination. We're still going to need to solve those problems. And maybe we won't be able to solve it with the guy we wanted to, but at least we can solve it with someone else. So that would be my take.
I agree. I just don't feel like anyone else is speaking to those problems. Like, we got Elizabeth Warren saying automation isn't that big of a deal. It's bad trade policy, which I agree. Trade policy is definitely a part of it. But we got Joe Biden the other day saying coal miners should learn the code. I mean,
did he say that again? Did he really?
2 days ago. Oh. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't feel like anyone else is speaking to those problems. So it's not just that we want to keep the mission alive. It's like no one is also taking up that mantle there. Everyone else is just like, we got our own thing and we're focused on it. So I don't know, man.
$50.
Whoa. Somebody just dropped a huge super chat
All right, Vaughn.
Vaughn Baker. But before we get to Vaughn's question, there was another super that was about asking what we think would happen with Conley. So I want to make sure we answer Khan's question before we get to Vaughn's. Khan said, what do you think will happen when Yang meets up with Obama?
You know, this is one of those things now. The Iran thing is going to cause a lot of stuff to change, like big time conversation. I think, you know, like we were talking about how things were trending up for Yang. If he misses the debate stage, and then we got the Iran conversation, and then we got it, it's going to be rough. I mean, I think I was feeling very confident about it going into January, but now with Obama, I don't think he's going to endorse him. I mean, we saw him sitting down with Warren and saying positive things about her. Is he going to do the same thing for Andrew Yang? I don't know. I think he probably very much planned on doing so before. I don't know what's going to happen now, but I still think it's a great look. As long as he gets the photo, I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say on the Obama thing, I actually think behind closed doors, I could see Obama and Yang getting along swimmingly. And I could see behind closed doors, Obama saying to people, hey, this guy is legit. Like he's a smart mofo. But publicly, I think it would be hard for him not to provide at least even-handed support to all the candidates, or maybe even like help out his buddy Joe, who was there for him for 8+ years. And I feel like Obama's a stand-up guy, and he's in a tough position because he wants to do right by his friends and his former colleagues and his, political partners. But he probably also knows that there are a lot of candidates out there, and maybe Joe isn't far and away the best, and maybe there's other folks like Yang who really are a breath of fresh air. My fingers are crossed that he says to Joe, hey, you need to talk to this guy, and you need to consider him as a running mate, or at a minimum as a cabinet member, because he understands stuff that you and I don't. That would be fantastic. Or if Biden decides to withdraw, dude, if Biden decided to pull out of the campaign and he endorsed Yang, how freaking amazing would that be?
I've given up that dream. I've given that up. Honestly, I just made a video this morning, and that's exactly what I was talking about. We get caught up and we're all excited about our different candidates or whatever. Right. Biden is very much winning right now. You know what I mean? Like there's no justification for him to say, I'm going to drop out now while I'm winning, unless he has some health event or some major thing. And now with the conversation going to foreign policy, this is just going to help him. Yeah. And he's already there in the back doors. His aides have come out and they're saying that he's probably just going to run for one term anyway. So he's offering a return to normalcy. And that's what a lot of people really just want. Like, we just want the madman gone. We don't know if we want to change things just yet, but let's just have a sane person be president for 4 years. And he's going to start looking real good. So those polls that we were looking forward to, I think they're going to show data we really weren't expecting.
All right. So if it does help Biden, which I agree with you, foreign policy is absolutely his strong suit. Although, like, his foreign policy calls have not been fantastic because he was pro-Iraq war, but we'll set that aside for a moment. But if he's also a one-termer, then suddenly that running mate position is basically president in waiting. Like, I might take the running. I personally would be like, if Andrew got that offer, I'd be like, bro, you got to take that shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that would be fast track. That would be tough. That would be tough for sure. He might have to really consider that.
All right. Let's get to Vaughn Baker. Hold on. Let me select his question. Brandon, can you highlight Vaughn's question for me? Oh, I got it. Here we go. I just signed on, and please, the two of you are talking. I thought the two of you could create an incredible talk show. I would sign up today. What would be the name of our show, Aaron?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where we take it.
Yeah. I there's a few options we could go for sure. But we'll have to sleep on that one. Let the audience suggest some show names for us. But But thank you, Vaughn, for supporting the channel, and that money will go to our buddies at Rush Hour 4. I didn't want to go there, but Brandon, just be careful what you're highlighting, all right, man? But Vaughn, the money goes to mostly Spanish audio dubbing and storage costs and things like that. Something that we didn't talk about, which was a hot topic, was the whole Iran thing. Let's do that. Let's talk about what are your thoughts on this Iran thing in general and its impact on the race?
Well, I'm not happy about it. You know what I mean? Like I said, I feel like we were going in a certain direction, and this is going to change everything. I definitely don't want more war, for sure. And I kind of wanted to get back to focusing on domestic policy. And I thought that's where we were definitely heading there. So Trump is kind of seems like trying to ensure that he's going to be reelected. And I think that's kind of why you make a move like this. Like, yeah, I understand that there was, possibly some intelligence that there was they're planning attacks in the U.S., but it just depends on what you want. You know what I mean? Do you go towards diplomacy? Do you say, let's sit down and talk to the enemies, or do you launch a strike like this? And yeah, we're in it now. So
yeah, the thing with this development with Iran is, if Trump had more credibility and had a track record for being truthful, then I would probably say, well, look, he's the commander-in-chief. He became aware of an imminent attack on U.S. interests, and he took action to save thousands of lives. But I don't know if that's really true. I know they're saying that. But it just seems like, is it a distraction? Are you trying to just kind of like have us look in another direction? Do you think this kind of fires up your base because you can, kind of pick a fight with a foreign leader? You feel like you kind of got your butt kicked by the North Koreans, and you need to show that you're a tough guy again. So I'm a little suspicious.
Yeah. And
I'm also very concerned about what Iran does, because this is one of those things where I was reading. Now, I'll stipulate that this is in the New York Times, and I'm sure there is a biased point of view, even subconsciously, for the right. But they were right. They were saying that after talking to several sources, that he made the decision to launch the attack on the general very quickly. It wasn't something that he like labored over, and like you see these pictures of like Kennedy looking out the window, like strenuously thinking through like what to do about Cuba, and spending days and days, or Clinton like going through like hours and hours of meetings and debates before he made decisions, or Obama kind of like quietly looking over his policy briefing papers, like his binders at night. That's not the style that apparently they're saying that Trump makes decisions. It's very fast, and kind of like The Apprentice.
Yeah.
And so my concern is like, dude, did he just kind of make this thing seat of his pants? And are we going to have to live with the repercussions for years or decades, depending on how aggressively Iran retaliates? I wonder if we start, we kind of wrote a check we can't cash. So yeah, my opinion on the whole Iran thing is like, I think we had a deal with Iran that was signed on by multiple countries that tried to keep them in a box and give them incentives to behave better. And they agreed to it, and they had been honoring it, as far as I understand. So they weren't like breaching the contract. And then we unilaterally walked out of it, and then, of course, introduced new sanctions on them and kind of forced them even more in a corner. And now we've basically killed their top general. I imagine if another country killed a Petraeus, or back in the, Iraq or the Desert Storm, like a Schwarzkopf, or, like a very prominent general, like the Mad Dog, Manaf, or whatever his name is. Any of our generals, like we would be fired up. I mean, we would consider that an act of war. if another country killed one of our generals.
For sure.
So I can't imagine the Iranians are going to be like, well, let's take a measured response. I mean, I kind of feel like it'd be very tempting for them to do something drastic.
That's what it seems like. That's what they're signaling. But are they posturing or are they serious? I mean, we won't know. You know what I mean? Do they really want to go there with somebody who is clearly thinking this little about launching that type of attack? So, and again, we'll have to see, man. If he's trying to get reelected, I don't know. This is going to definitely draw a line in the sand. I mean, like I was talking about with Biden, does this push people more towards Biden and saying, you know what, let's see if we can fix this? Or is this like, okay, we got to rally behind our president and, hopefully he can continue doing what's right for us? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how the people feel about it.
All right, so let's do this. Let's assume that Iran does counterattack and blows up some parts of bases or embassies, does some terrible stuff. And that escalate, and it'll probably also throw some missiles over to Israel, which then stirs up more. And then Trump loses the re-election, and then the new president, is like, oh, welcome to the new world that this mess that they've inherited, right? It's funny, like Trump always talks about, how the international affairs was such a mess under Obama and he had to come in. It's like, no, dude, everything was fine.
Yeah.
like North Korea was fine, right? We just had to deal with them. But at any rate, who do you think, how do you think the current Democratic candidates would do? Like you mentioned, Biden's strong suit is foreign policy. So do you think who would be best positioned to steer the country through this kind of crazy foreign environment?
I would have to give it to Biden. I mean, honestly, I don't think that, but I don't think he's going to do anything different. I don't think that he would stop, pursuing military action. I think it would just be, he'll make it look good. You know what I mean? He'll make people feel confident about it. He'll give us a timetable that we may or may not actually meet. And, he'll try to report in frequently, but I don't think that he's not going to just put the brakes on it because somebody else started the action.
Yeah.
I just think, we have a position where no one wants to look weak. And you would kind of be looking extremely weak if you took over and said, okay, we messed up. We're sorry. That was the other guy. New management. We apologize. Let's walk it back. We can get back in the Iran deal. Like, is someone actually going to do that? I don't even think Yang would do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Biden would be a calming factor, a steady hand on the wheel. He would not do anything drastic one way or another. He would not escalate, and he would not dramatically de-escalate. And at the worst, so like with Biden, you basically contain your downside. With Yang, the thing I like about Yang is he doesn't have a lot of baggage. And so, in a weird way, Biden has a little bit of baggage because of the Iraq war thing. And like, maybe he's got that kind of hang over his head. But I feel like Yang is a very logical, dispassionate, kind of rational, almost like a Vulcan kind of type of personality. But, when the world's going nuts, like you kind of need someone that's going to be like, okay, here's how I think about it. Like, these are our options, and here's why I think we should do it this way. With Warren, I wonder what she would do. She never really talks about foreign policy other than like not getting involved. But this will be a different problem because you can't just say we can't get involved because we will already have been involved.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't want to go to the party. We're in the party. The party's going south, and people are throwing chairs. Like, what are we going to do?
Hey, I don't envy whoever ends up in the seat. I definitely don't envy him at all.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could conclude probably that Biden would be the perhaps safest. I think Yang may be a little bit more effective and innovative, but I don't have any strong. I'm like kind of 60-40 on that one. And then Buttigieg, I don't know. I think he'd be kind of like, I hope he would do the right thing for the country. I think he might be a little too clever for his own good, and try and like get a big victory and come and go down in history as like the greatest leader ever, and maybe take more risks than he needs to. Sanders would probably just he would just probably pull back from everything and just focus on domestic stuff. But the risk would be that like the genie's kind of out of the bottle and you can't just like, not look that way. So anyway, yeah, so that's the foreign policy stuff. Oh, someone was also asking about the fires in Australia. Have you been following that at all?
I have not.
So apparently there's a lot of them. And it's like displaced thousands of people, and it's like a national emergency. And what's interesting is that the prime minister has always been very dismissive of climate change. And I think he and Trump actually get along okay. But he's famous for having a speech where he held a lump of coal saying like, hey, you shouldn't be afraid of this. This is what powers the Australian economy. And I was on a different live stream a couple days ago, and someone was saying, hey, you're being too dismissive of Republicans, because a lot of Republicans, it's not that they deny climate change, but they deny any human involvement in climate change. And my feeling is like, well, that's kind of code for, therefore, there's nothing we can do about it. And maybe you're right, but if you're wrong, like that's a big mistake. Yeah. You don't want to be like 20, 30 years from now and Brandon kind of, being in 120-degree summers thinking, well, why the hell didn't they do anything? And the answer was, well, we weren't sure if it was really us, so we decided to do nothing.
Jeez.
Yeah. So other than that, like the world's just kind of normal, huh? At least we have our football.
There you go.
Were there any other topics that you wanted to hit before we wrap up, Aaron?
No, I think we covered all the hot topics, What I mean?
So if people want to follow you, where can they kind of keep up to date with what's going on with your content?
Yeah, I'm on at Humanity Films on YouTube, and that's my Instagram and Twitter. I'm not active at all on Instagram. I'm barely on Twitter, but if you need to contact me, Twitter is the best way to go. And check out my channel, man. All
right, let me show that little ticker for you there. Humanity Films. Check it out. It's a great channel. The production values are always on point. He doesn't use the ghetto Yeti microphone. He's got like the really good stuff. And I love that you also enjoy looking at data, and people in the chat were saying how they like both of our channels because we get into the nitty-gritty. And I also really appreciate you coming on, Aaron, because I love the fact that you are not a tried and true, like always voting the Democratic Party no matter what, because I actually think that's Yang's secret weapon, is that he has this cross-party appeal. And if we can just get to the freaking general election, he can really use that superpower. But unfortunately, that cross-party appeal doesn't really go so far in the Democratic primary.
That's the problem. I've been saying from the beginning, I feel like he could have ran as a Republican and had a really great shot. And I would have loved to see his message if he was running as a Republican, because he wouldn't have to deal with the far left. You know what I mean? He could say things in a more open way. And I think he would go over really well as a Republican. I think UBI, like you were talking about UBI being the future, is going to be the future at some point regardless. But I think as a Republican, I think UBI goes over even better when you're able to hit it from the standpoint of, well, look, we're going to get rid of all these, or we're going to drastically cut down all this bureaucracy. It sounds so much better. You know what I mean? I think than comparing himself with Bernie Sanders and the free giveaways. It's like, okay, well, this just makes more sense. Like the government doesn't get it right. Why don't we just give it to the people and maybe they can do what's best for them?
But even this year, I mean, if he had run as a Republican, he would have no chance of getting.
Well, only because of Trump. But I mean, if this was Trump's second term and he's coming into it,
right, and like Romney were the leading candidate at the time, then you could have this new guy Yang come in. Yeah. But I kind of feel like those days of the Republican Party I feel like the party has changed so much that we're going to be kind of unwinding the Trump effect potentially for, many, many years. I mean, like I have members of my family who are MAGA, and one of them went to a Trump rally and he came back like so brainwashed. It was scary. I was like, dude, what did they do to you at that stadium?
Very special Kool-Aid at the rally.
Oh my God, dude. They were freebasing that Kool-Aid. I was like, don't go to those things. And I regret it because when he told me he was supporting Trump, I said, you know what? You should go to one of their rallies and then you'll see.
Little did you know.
And little did I know, he's like, hey, Tom, I went to the rally. It was amazing. Here's the pictures. I was like, no, this is not what I expected. Yeah. So, but at any rate, well, let's keep our fingers crossed that we make this debate. And if we don't, that we pull out some big time endorsements. We get some more media coverage. We basically throw some Hail Marys. Yeah. And Iowa and New Hampshire save our asses because that's what we're going to need. So if anybody here is in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina, Nevada, or has time to go and canvass, what I hear from the campaign is the number one thing to do to kind of help the campaign is to get on the ground in Iowa and New Hampshire. And then if you can't do that, then give money. And if you can't do that, then text bank and call. Phone bank, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, like support folks like Humanity Films, Aaron over here, support his channel, follow him on Twitter, because for those of us who are producing this content, our content reaches a lot of people, and it helps if we feel like, there's an audience there for what we're doing, and it kind of motivates us because as Aaron mentioned, a lot of us have full-time jobs and this is kind of a side gig. And so if we know that there's an audience out there that really cares and supports us, then I think it helps us produce even more stuff and get more of the word out there. So with that, I will say happy Sunday to everybody. I hope everybody enjoys, for those of you who watch the NFL, enjoys the Seahawks game. It's going to be a really tough one. But like a lot of people have been saying, Andrew Yang is a Russell Wilson of 2020, and miracles can happen. All right, goodbye, nerds. Aaron, you want to say goodbye, nerds?
Goodbye, nerds.
Brandon, do you want to say goodbye, nerds?
Bye, nerds.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Don't edit.